Have you ever looked at someone and felt that quiet panic rising in your chest, wondering if they're the one? Or worse, have you spent months, maybe years with someone, and deep down you knew something was off, but you couldn't bring yourself to face it? Here's what most people won't tell you. That feeling, that uncertainty, that constant questioning, it's already your answer. When someone is truly meant for you, you'll know. Not because everything will be perfect, not because you'll never have doubts, but because something deeper than your thoughts will simply recognize them. And today, we're going to explore why that is through the wisdom of one of the most brilliant minds in human psychology. Carl Jung spent his life studying the hidden landscapes of the human soul. He understood something most of us forget. The people who enter our lives aren't random accidents. They're reflections, mirrors held up by the universe showing us exactly what we need to see about ourselves. Nothing we experience is mere coincidence. That person who captivated you at first sight, the friend who appeared exactly when you needed them, the relationship that keeps repeating the same painful pattern. None of it is chance. All of it is your unconscious mind speaking to you in the only language it knows: experience. Think about the last time you felt an inexplicable pull towards someone. Maybe you couldn't explain it logically. Maybe it didn't even make sense. Their presence just felt right in a way that bypassed your rational mind entirely. That's not magic. That's synchronicity. It's the moment when your inner world and the outer world align so perfectly that you can't help but notice. But here's where it gets complicated. That magnetic pull you feel, it doesn't always mean they're right for you. Sometimes it means they're familiar, and familiar doesn't always mean healthy. You see, your unconscious has been keeping score since childhood. Every relationship, every wound, every moment someone made you feel unseen or unloved, it's all stored in there. They're creating a blueprint for what love is supposed to feel like. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If love meant chaos in your early years, chaos will feel like love now. This is why so many of us find ourselves drawn to people who challenge us in destructive ways. People who withhold affection just enough to keep us chasing. People who make us feel like we have to earn love, prove our worth, fight for every scrap of attention. It's not that we're broken. It's that we're trying to solve an old equation using a new person. Jung understood this deeply. He knew that until we make the unconscious conscious, we're doomed to repeat the same patterns over and over, calling it fate, when it's really just unfinished business from our past. So when someone is truly meant for you, what does that feel like? It feels like peace, not the absence of challenge, but the absence of constant struggle. It feels like you can finally breathe without monitoring every word, every gesture, every moment for signs of rejection. You don't feel the need to perform or pretend. You don't have to shrink yourself to fit into their world or expand beyond recognition to keep their interest. With the right person, there's a sense of ease. Not because everything is easy, but because even the hard moments don't make you question your fundamental worth. They don't make you feel like you're fighting a losing battle just to be seen. Most importantly, the right person doesn't pull you away from yourself. They bring you closer to who you truly are. They don't demand that you abandon your dreams, ignore your intuition, or betray your values to make room for them. Instead, their presence in your life becomes a mirror, reflecting your own strength back to you. But to recognize that person when they arrive, you first have to understand something crucial about yourself. You have to recognize the patterns you've been living, the ways you've been choosing connection, the reasons behind your choices. Because here's what nobody wants to hear: the right person can't appear in your life until you're ready to receive them. And being ready doesn't mean being perfect. It means being aware, conscious, willing to look at your own shadows instead of projecting them onto everyone you meet. This is where the real work begins. Not out there in the world of dating apps and chance encounters, but in here in the quiet spaces of your own heart, where you've been avoiding the most important question of all. Not, is this person right for me, but am I right for myself? Let's talk about something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The real reason your relationships keep following the same script, even when you swear you're choosing differently this time. Every relationship you've ever had is trying to tell you something about yourself. Not about the other person, about you. This is the foundation of everything Jung taught about human psychology. We don't just experience the world objectively. We experience it through the filter of our unconscious mind, and that unconscious is constantly projecting its contents onto the people around us. What does that actually mean in everyday language? It means that when you look at someone and see them as cold, unavailable, or emotionally distant, you might actually be seeing a part of yourself that you've learned to suppress. When you're drawn to someone chaotic and unpredictable, you might be seeking the parts of yourself you've had to keep controlled and hidden. This isn't mystical theory. It's the mechanism behind every pattern that keeps repeating in your life. Have you ever noticed how you seem to attract the same type of person over and over? Different faces, different names, but the same underlying dynamic. That's not bad luck. That's your unconscious trying desperately to resolve something it couldn't figure out the first time. Maybe you keep finding yourself with people who take you for granted. People who seem wonderful at first, but slowly start treating you like an afterthought. People who make you feel like you're too much and not enough at the same time. It's infuriating. It's painful. But if you can step back from the emotion for just a moment and look at it honestly, you might ask yourself, is it them or is it me who doesn't value myself enough? And this is where most people shut down. Because it's so much easier to blame the other person than to look in the mirror and ask what part of you allowed this dynamic to continue. What part of you stayed when every instinct was screaming to leave? What part of you believed you didn't deserve better? The truth about personal development is that it's not comfortable. Real growth requires you to face the parts of yourself you've been running from. The beliefs you inherited about what you're worth. The patterns you learned about how love is supposed to feel. The ways you've been betraying yourself while blaming others for not seeing your value. Jung talked about making the unconscious conscious. Because until you do, it will run your life from the shadows, making the same choices, seeking the same situations, creating the same outcomes, and you'll keep calling it fate. But it's not fate. It's just patterns. And patterns can be changed. Think about your last significant relationship. Not the surface story of what went wrong, but the deeper emotional dynamic. Did you feel safe expressing your needs, or did you learn to swallow them to keep the peace? Did you feel genuinely seen, or were you constantly performing to earn love? Did conflict feel like a conversation or like a threat to the entire relationship? Now go back further, to the relationship before that one, and the one before that. Do you see the thread? That thread is your unconscious blueprint for love. It was written early, probably before you had the awareness to question it. And now it's running in the background of every connection you form, drawing you toward people who confirm what you already believe about yourself, about love, about what you're allowed to have. This is why wrong relationships persist, even when we logically know they're wrong. Because they feel right on an unconscious level. They activate the same neural pathways that were carved out in childhood. They trigger the same emotional responses we learn to associate with intimacy. If you grew up having to earn affection, you'll be drawn to people who withhold it. If you learned that love meant sacrifice, you'll choose people who demand everything and give little in return. If you internalize the message that you were too much or not enough, you'll find partners who confirm that belief at every turn. And the cruelest part, you'll call this love. Because it feels familiar. Because it matches the template you carry inside. But here's the awakening. Familiarity is not love. Intensity is not depth. And just because something feels powerful doesn't mean it's good for you. When someone is meant for you, when they're truly aligned with your highest good, the feeling is different. It's not the anxious obsession of wondering if they'll text back. It's not the constant vigilance of monitoring their mood to know if you're safe. It's not walking on eggshells hoping you don't trigger their anger or withdrawal. It's peace. Genuine, quiet, steady peace. The right person doesn't trigger your abandonment wounds every other day. They don't make you question your reality or doubt your perception. They don't create chaos and then love bomb you into staying. They simply show up consistently, treating you with the kind of respect and care you've been giving away to people who never deserved it. But you can't recognize that kind of love if you've never given it to yourself first. Before we go deeper, I want you to pause for a moment. Think about the patterns we've just discussed. What's coming up for you right now? Drop a comment below, sharing one pattern you're ready to break. Your honesty might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. This brings us to the most important relationship you'll ever have, the one that determines the quality of every other connection in your life. Your relationship with yourself. Jung taught that the journey toward wholeness, what he called individuation, is the process of becoming who you truly are, beneath all the masks and expectations. It's about integrating the parts of yourself you've rejected, owning the shadows you've denied, and standing fully in your authentic truth. And here's what happens when you commit to that journey. You stop attracting people who need you to be small. You stop choosing relationships that require you to abandon yourself. You start recognizing almost instinctively when someone's energy doesn't match yours. Because once you know what it feels like to be at peace with yourself, you can't unsee the chaos in connections that ask you to betray that peace. This is what it means to be ready for the right person. Not perfect, not without wounds or struggles, but aware, conscious of your patterns. Willing to choose differently even when the familiar calls out to you with its seductive promises. The people who are meant for you can only find you when you're vibrating at the frequency of your truth. And that frequency isn't something you fake or force. It's something you earn through the hard, beautiful work of coming home to yourself. So the question isn't really about whether someone else is right for you. The question is, are you right for yourself? Have you done the work to know who you are beneath the conditioning? Have you learned to sit with your own presence without needing someone else to validate your existence? Because when you have, everything changes. The desperation falls away. The need to prove yourself dissolves. The fear of being alone transforms into the sacred experience of being whole. And that's when the right people start appearing. Not because you manifested them with vision boards, but because you're finally ready to recognize them. Now we need to go deeper, into the hidden architecture of attraction, into the unconscious forces that have been shaping your relationships since before you could even name what you were feeling. There's a concept in Jung's work that explains more about your relationship patterns than almost anything else. He called it the anima and animus, the inner feminine in men and the inner masculine in women. But it's so much more than that simplistic definition. Think of it this way: inside each of us lives an image, a template of the idealized other. It was formed through every interaction you had with the opposite energy growing up. Your parents, your early relationships, the stories you absorbed about what love should look like. All of it merged into this unconscious blueprint that now guides who you're attracted to and why. This is why certain people captivate you instantly, while others, equally attractive and kind, leave you completely unmoved. It's not random chemistry. It's your inner template recognizing something it knows, something it's been searching for. But here's the problem: the template was formed when you were young, before you had the wisdom to question what you were learning. If your early experiences of love were painful, confusing, or conditional, that template carries those wounds. And now as an adult, you're unconsciously drawn to people who activate those same wounds. This is the hidden mechanism behind why we fall for the wrong people. They're not wrong in the universal sense. They're wrong for our growth, for our healing, for our peace. But they feel right because they match the template we carry inside. A woman who grew up with an emotionally distant father might find herself drawn to men who withhold affection, not because she enjoys the pain, but because her animus, her inner masculine template, was shaped by that distance. It feels like love because it feels like home, even when home was never truly safe. A man who experienced conditional love from his mother might seek women who make him constantly prove his worth. His anima, his inner feminine template, learned that love must be earned through performance. So he recreates that dynamic over and over, exhausting himself in relationships that never quite satisfy. The tragedy is that we often mistake this repetition for bad luck or poor judgment, when really it's the unconscious trying to heal an old wound by recreating the original injury. It's like your psyche believes that if you can just get this person to love you differently than your parent did, you'll finally fix what was broken all those years ago. But it doesn't work that way. The wound doesn't heal through repetition. It heals through recognition and conscious choice. This is why some people find themselves drawn to partners who are unavailable, critical, or emotionally withholding. It's not masochism. It's an unconscious attempt to rewrite history, to finally get the love that was withheld in childhood, to prove that you're worthy of the affection that was made conditional. But you can't heal a childhood wound through an adult relationship. You can only recognize the pattern and choose differently. This isn't conscious. Nobody wakes up thinking, "Today, I'll choose someone who triggers all my childhood wounds." But the unconscious doesn't care about your conscious goals. It cares about resolution. It wants to finish the story that started decades ago. And it will keep bringing you the same characters in different bodies until you finally understand the lesson. So what's the lesson? The lesson is that you can't heal old wounds through new people. You can't fix your relationship with your father by finding a man who finally shows up. You can't resolve your mother's emotional unavailability by finding a woman who chooses you unconditionally. All you can do is recognize the pattern, understand where it came from, and choose differently despite what feels familiar. This is the deepest work of knowing when someone is meant for you. It requires you to distinguish between what feels comfortable and what actually serves your growth. Let me paint you a picture. Two people walk into your life around the same time. One of them is exciting, unpredictable, makes you feel alive in ways you haven't felt in years. The other is steady, present, maybe not as thrilling, but genuinely kind and consistent. Your unconscious template will pull you toward the exciting one every single time, because excitement equals love in the template you carry. But excitement often masks chaos. It's the adrenaline rush of uncertainty, of wondering if they'll stay or leave, of riding the highs and lows like an emotional roller coaster. Meanwhile, the steady person might feel boring, because your template learned that love is supposed to hurt a little, supposed to keep you on edge, supposed to require constant effort and vigilance. Peace doesn't register as love when your blueprint was written in chaos. This is why so many people say they want a healthy relationship, but then choose the dramatic one every time. They're not lying about what they want. Their conscious mind genuinely desires peace, but their unconscious is running a different program entirely. And the unconscious always wins until you make it conscious. Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is that principle in action. You think you're cursed to always choose wrong. You think there's something fundamentally broken in you. But you're not broken. You're just operating from a template that no longer serves you. And templates can be rewritten. The process starts with awareness, with recognizing the pattern, with asking yourself hard questions about why you're attracted to who you're attracted to. What does this person represent to you? What old story are you trying to resolve through them? What would it mean to choose differently? These aren't comfortable questions. They require you to sit with parts of yourself you'd rather ignore. The parts that are still waiting for your father to see you. The parts that are still trying to earn your mother's approval. The parts that believe you're only lovable when you're useful. But this discomfort is where transformation lives. This is where you stop being a victim of your unconscious patterns, start becoming the author of your own story. There's another force at play here that Jung understood deeply: the voice that doesn't require logic to know truth. Your intuition. Your rational mind is brilliant at justifying things. It can convince you that the person who keeps disappointing you just needs more time. It can explain away red flags, rationalize toxic behavior, and build elaborate stories about why this time will be different. But your intuition doesn't lie. It's that feeling in your gut that something's off, even when everything looks perfect on paper. It's that subtle sense of unease that you try to ignore because you so desperately want this to work. It's the voice that whispers, "This isn't right," while your mind shouts, "But they're exactly what I've been looking for." When someone is truly meant for you, your intuition doesn't sound alarm bells. There's no underlying anxiety masquerading as excitement. There's no voice in the back of your mind warning you to protect yourself. There's just clarity, a deep, quiet knowing that needs no explanation. But you have to be willing to listen to that voice. And for most people, that's the hardest part, because listening to your intuition often means walking away from what you want to believe, from the story you've invested in, from the person you've been trying to make fit. This is where courage comes in. Not the courage to stay and fight for something that's hurting you, but the courage to honor what you know to be true, even when it breaks your heart to admit it. Let me tell you what happens when you ignore your intuition. You end up 6 months, a year, 5 years down the road, looking back and realizing you knew from the beginning. You knew in month 2 when they showed you who they were. You knew when the pattern started repeating. You knew when your body started holding tension every time they walked in the room. But you overrode that knowing with hope, with potential, with the belief that your love could change them, heal them, make them ready for what you were offering. And now you're exhausted, depleted, wondering how you ended up here again. The answer is you stopped listening to the voice that knew better all along. So here's what I want you to understand. Your intuition is not your enemy. It's not trying to keep you alone or sabotage your happiness. It's trying to protect you from repeating patterns that don't serve your growth. It's trying to guide you toward what's truly aligned with who you're becoming. When the right person appears, your intuition will confirm it, not with anxiety or doubt or that nagging sense that you're trying to convince yourself, but with peace, with recognition, with a quiet certainty that settles in your bones and needs no defense. The question is, are you willing to wait for that? Are you willing to sit in the uncertainty of not knowing when they'll arrive, instead of forcing connections that require you to silence your inner knowing? Because that's the choice. You can keep choosing what feels familiar, what activates your template, what makes you feel needed or challenged or alive through chaos. Or you can choose to honor yourself enough to wait for what actually feels right. Not perfect, not without work or growth or challenge, but right, aligned, true. And the only way to do that is to first make peace with being alone, to stop seeing solitude as punishment and start recognizing it as the sacred space where you finally meet yourself. Jung taught that loneliness is not a void to be filled, but a teacher to be honored. It's in the quiet spaces when you're not distracted by someone else's needs or drama or potential that you finally hear your own voice. The real one, not the one that's been conditioned to please or perform or pretend. In that space, you begin to understand what you actually want, not what you think you should want. You begin to feel what peace really feels like in your body. You begin to recognize the difference between connection and codependency, between love and the desperate need to be chosen. And when you emerge from that space, you're different. You're no longer willing to accept breadcrumbs while pretending it's a feast. You're no longer confused about whether someone is right for you, because you've finally learned to trust the voice that's been trying to guide you all along. This is the depth work, the shadow work, the integration of all the parts you've been denying in hopes that someone else could make you whole. And it's not optional if you want to break the cycle. It's the only way through. So you've seen the patterns. You understand the unconscious forces at play. You've started listening to your intuition instead of overriding it with hope. Now comes the part that actually changes your life. The integration, the practice, the daily choice to honor what you know instead of abandoning yourself for the promise of connection. This isn't abstract philosophy anymore. This is concrete action. Let me walk you through what this actually looks like. First, you need to excavate your shadow. Not in a therapeutic office with a clipboard, though that helps, but in the quiet honesty of your own reflection. Jung's shadow work is simply the practice of bringing light to the parts of yourself you've been denying. Start here. What qualities do you most criticize in other people? Write them down. Now ask yourself, where do those qualities live in me? This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about recognizing that what we judge most harshly in others is often what we've rejected in ourselves. Do you hate neediness in people? Look at where you're needy but won't admit it. Do you despise dishonesty? Examine where you're lying to yourself. Do you criticize people for being cold? Notice where you've shut down your own heart to protect yourself from pain. This is projection in action. And when you start owning your projections, something incredible happens. Other people stop carrying the weight of your unexamined shadows. You start seeing them as they actually are, not as symbols of what you've repressed. Second, map your relationship patterns with brutal honesty. Get out a piece of paper. List your last 3 to 5 significant relationships, not just romantic ones. Deep friendships, mentors, anyone who occupied emotional real estate in your life. Now look for the common threads. What dynamics repeated? What emotions did you keep experiencing? Where did you compromise yourself? Where did you ignore red flags? What needs went consistently unmet? This isn't about blaming yourself or them. It's about pattern recognition. Because once you see the pattern clearly, it loses its unconscious power over you. You can't repeat what you're conscious of. Or rather, if you do repeat it, you're making a choice, not following an invisible script. Third, start practicing radical self-honoring. This sounds simple, but it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. It means choosing your truth over their approval. It means setting boundaries, even when it risks the connection. It means walking away from what looks good on paper but feels wrong in your body. Every time you honor yourself, you're rewriting the template. You're teaching your unconscious that your worth isn't negotiable, that love doesn't require you to betray yourself, that you can survive someone's disappointment without collapsing. And here's what radical self-honoring looks like in practice. It's saying no when everything in you wants to say yes just to keep the peace. It's speaking your truth even when your voice shakes. It's leaving the room when someone speaks to you with disrespect. It's refusing to explain yourself to people who are determined to misunderstand you. It's choosing your own company over bad company. It's protecting your energy like it's the most valuable resource you have, because it is. Each of these choices feels small in the moment, but they accumulate. They build a new foundation inside you. A foundation that says, I matter. My needs matter. My boundaries matter. And I will not abandon myself to make someone else comfortable. This is the work that changes everything. Not positive affirmations or vision boards, but actual concrete choices that align your actions with your values. Choices that prove to your unconscious that you mean what you say about loving yourself. This is where most people fail. Not because they don't understand the concepts, but because the fear of being alone is stronger than the commitment to being whole. So they compromise. They stay a little longer. They give one more chance. They convince themselves that this time the pattern will magically break without them having to do anything different. But patterns don't break through hoping. They break through choosing, consciously, repeatedly, even when it hurts. So what does it actually feel like when someone is aligned with you, when they're not just triggering your template, but actually meeting you in truth? Here are the markers. The unmistakable signs that something real is happening. First, peace over intensity. This is the biggest one. With the wrong people, there's constant drama masquerading as passion. Highs and lows, push and pull. The anxiety of not knowing where you stand. With the right person, there's a calm certainty. You're not obsessing. You're not checking your phone every 5 minutes, hoping they've texted. You're just present, knowing they're present too. Second, freedom within connection. You don't feel like you're performing or hiding parts of yourself. You're not monitoring your words to avoid triggering them. You're not shrinking to make room for their ego or expanding beyond recognition to keep their interest. You're just you. You're just fully, messily, imperfectly you. And that's not only accepted, it's celebrated. Third, natural reciprocity. You're not keeping score because there's no need. Effort flows both ways without resentment. Care is mutual. Nobody's dragging the relationship forward alone. Nobody's wondering if they're more invested. It just works because both people are showing up with the same intention. Fourth, growth without destruction. They challenge you, yes. But the challenge inspires you to expand, not to question your fundamental worth. They push you toward your potential without crushing your spirit. Conflict doesn't feel like a threat to the entire relationship. It feels like an opportunity to understand each other better. Fifth, synchronistic timing. They appear when you're ready, not when you're desperate. When you've done enough inner work to recognize them. When you're no longer seeking someone to complete you, but to share the journey with. The timing itself is a sign that this is different. And the ultimate test, do I feel more like myself or less like myself around them? This question cuts through all the noise, all the justifications and explanations and potential. Because if someone truly loves you, you become more of yourself in their presence, not less. You access parts of yourself you'd forgotten existed. You feel safe enough to be vulnerable. You trust enough to be honest. If you're constantly editing yourself, walking on eggshells, wondering if the real you would be too much or not enough, that's your answer. They're not aligned with your truth. They're aligned with the version of you that performs for love. But recognizing these markers only matters if you're willing to act on what you recognize. Which brings us to perhaps the most difficult part of this entire journey, letting go of what isn't aligned. This is where courage meets compassion. Courage to honor your truth. Compassion to release the story you've been clinging to. You have to be willing to walk away from potential. From the person they could be, if only they healed, grew changed. From the relationship you've been trying to force into existence through sheer willpower and hope. You have to be willing to grieve. Not just the person, but the future you imagined with them. The dreams you built. The version of yourself you became trying to make it work. All of it has to be mourned before you can move forward. This grief is not weakness. It's necessary. It's how you metabolize the experience and integrate the lessons without carrying the pain forward into the next connection. And here's something most people don't understand about grief. It's not linear. You don't wake up one day and suddenly feel better. Some days you'll feel strong, clear, certain you made the right choice. Other days you'll doubt everything, wondering if you gave up too soon, if you should have tried harder, if maybe you're the problem after all. These waves are normal. They're part of the integration process. Your psyche is reorganizing itself around a new reality, and that takes time. The key is not to interpret the difficult days as evidence that you made a mistake. They're simply evidence that you're human, that you care deeply, and that real change requires mourning what was before you can fully embrace what will be. Let yourself feel it all. The anger at time lost, the sadness for the future that won't happen, the relief mixed with guilt, the hope tangled with fear. All of it is valid. All of it is part of the process. And on the other side of this grief, you'll emerge stronger, clearer, more aligned with your truth than ever before. Jung understood that transformation requires death. Not physical death, but the death of who you used to be. The death of the patterns that no longer serve you. The death of the belief that you need to sacrifice yourself to be loved. And in that death, there's rebirth. A new version of you emerges. One who knows her worth. One who trusts his intuition. One who would rather be alone and whole than partnered and fragmented. This version of you doesn't settle. Not because of arrogance, but because you finally understood that settling isn't kindness. It's betrayal. Betrayal of yourself and betrayal of the other person who deserves someone, who genuinely wants them, not someone who's just afraid of being alone. When you choose yourself like this, something shifts in the universe. You stop attracting the same patterns because you're no longer the same person. Your energy changes. Your standards change. Your choices change. You start noticing things you used to overlook. Red flags you used to rationalize. Incompatibilities you used to minimize. And instead of seeing this as being picky or difficult, you recognize it as wisdom, as self-love in action. The right people start appearing, not because you're manifesting them, but because you're finally ready to see them. They were probably always there, but you were too busy trying to make the wrong ones work to notice. And when you meet someone who's truly aligned, you won't need to question it. You won't need to analyze or overthink or seek advice from everyone you know. You'll just know. In the quiet certainty of your bones. In the peace that settles over you instead of the anxiety you've mistaken for excitement. This knowing doesn't come from your head. It comes from a deeper place. The place that's been trying to guide you all along. The place that finally has permission to speak because you've stopped drowning it out with fear and desperation. This is what it means to be ready for true love. Not perfect love. Not love without challenges or growth edges. But real love. The kind that doesn't require you to betray yourself. The kind that invites you deeper into your truth instead of further from it. And if that person hasn't arrived yet, that's not a problem. It's an invitation. An invitation to keep deepening your relationship with yourself. To keep healing the wounds that have been driving your patterns. To keep choosing yourself even when the loneliness feels overwhelming. Because when they do arrive, and they will, you want to be ready to receive them, not as a savior or a solution to your emptiness, but as a companion on the journey. Someone who sees you and chooses you, not because you've convinced them you're worthy, but because your authentic presence speaks to something true in them. That's the love worth waiting for. That's the connection worth honoring yourself to receive. So here we are, at the end of one journey and the beginning of another. You've gone deep. You've faced the shadows. You've recognized the patterns. You've learned to listen to the voice that's been guiding you all along. And now I want to tell you what it actually feels like when the right person walks into your life. Not the Hollywood version, not the fairy tale, but the real lived experience of true recognition. It won't be fireworks. It won't be the breathless obsession that you've confused with love for so long. It will be something quieter, something deeper, something that feels less like falling and more like coming home. You'll look at them and something in you will just settle. There won't be the frantic energy of wondering if they feel the same way. There won't be the anxiety of trying to be perfect so they'll stay. There will just be this quiet knowing. This sense that you've met someone who sees you, really sees you, and isn't scared of what they find. The conversation will flow without effort, not because you agree on everything, but because there's space for both of you to be fully present. You won't feel like you're performing or auditioning. You'll just be yourself, and somehow that will be enough. They won't trigger your old wounds in that destructive way. They won't make you feel small or question your reality. They won't play games or withhold affection to keep you chasing. They'll just show up, consistently, honestly, with the same intention you've been carrying all along. And here's what will surprise you. It might feel strange at first. If you're used to chaos, peace can feel uncomfortable. If you're used to fighting for love, receiving it freely can feel disorienting. Your nervous system might actually need time to adjust to being safe. This is normal. This is the recalibration process. Your body learning a new rhythm. Your heart learning that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. You might even sabotage it at first. Test them to see if they'll leave. Create problems where none exist. Pull away when they get close. This is your old template trying to protect you, trying to confirm what it believes to be true about love. But if they're truly aligned with you, they'll hold space for your healing. They won't punish you for your past. They'll simply be patient while you learn to trust something new. And this patience, this consistency, this unwavering presence will slowly teach your nervous system that it's safe to land. Safe to stop running. Safe to finally rest in connection. But once you settle into it, once you allow yourself to trust this new experience, everything changes. You realize that all those years of struggling, all those relationships that didn't work, they weren't punishments. They were preparation. They were teaching you to recognize the real thing when it finally arrived. And here you are, changed, transformed, not into someone perfect, but into someone whole, someone who knows their worth without needing external validation, someone who trusts their intuition, someone who would rather be alone than settle for less than what they deserve. This is the new you, the one who emerged from the fire of transformation, the one who did the inner work while everyone else was busy blaming their exes and repeating the same patterns, the one who chose growth over comfort, truth over convenience, and self-love over the desperate need to be chosen. Look at how far you've come. From the person who couldn't tell the difference between intensity and love. From the one who ignored every red flag, hoping this time would be different. From the one who believed they weren't enough, or they were too much, or they needed to change to be worthy of love. You're not that person anymore. You've rewritten the template. You've integrated the shadows. You've made the unconscious conscious, and in doing so, you've reclaimed your power to choose. This transformation ripples out beyond romantic relationships. It affects everything. The friendships you maintain, the opportunities you attract, the way you move through the world. Because when you change your relationship with yourself, you change the frequency you're broadcasting, and different things start resonating with you. You notice that you're no longer drawn to drama, that the people who used to captivate you now seem exhausting, that you can spot manipulation and emotional unavailability from a mile away, and instead of trying to fix it, you simply walk away. You've become someone who honors their intuition over their hope, someone who trusts the process instead of forcing outcomes, someone who knows that the right things find you when you're ready, not when you're desperate. And if the right person hasn't arrived yet, you're not panicking, you're not settling, you're not lowering your standards or convincing yourself that maybe you're asking for too much. You're simply continuing to deepen your relationship with yourself, knowing that every day you spend in your own presence is preparing you for the connection you truly deserve. This is the paradox Jung understood so well. You can't find what you're looking for outside until you've found it inside. You can't recognize true love in another until you've cultivated it within yourself. You can't attract wholeness while you're still operating from a place of lack. So if you're reading this and wondering when your person will arrive, I want you to shift the question. Instead of, when will they come? Ask, am I ready to receive them? Have you done the work to understand your patterns? Have you healed the wounds that were driving your choices? Have you learned to sit with yourself without needing distraction or validation? Have you become the person who would naturally attract the love you're seeking? And here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. Readiness isn't a destination. It's not like you'll wake up one day and suddenly be completely healed, all wounds resolved, all patterns broken. Readiness is more like a threshold. It's the point where you've done enough inner work that you can recognize healthy love when it appears, where you've learned enough about yourself that you won't sabotage what's good because it doesn't match your old template, where you trust yourself enough to honor your intuition over your fear. You'll know you're ready when being alone no longer terrifies you, when you can sit in your own company without reaching for distractions, when you genuinely enjoy your own presence, when you've built a life that fulfills you, and a partner would be an addition to that fullness, not a solution to your emptiness. Because when you have, you won't need to search. You won't need to force. You won't need to convince or chase or prove. You'll simply be living your life aligned with your truth, and the right person will recognize that alignment in you because they're aligned with their own truth too. That's what synchronicity really means. Not that the universe will magically deliver your soulmate, but that when you're ready, when you're truly ready, life will bring you what you need. Not always what you want, but what you need for your continued growth and evolution. And sometimes, what you need is more time alone, more time to integrate the lessons, more time to strengthen your foundation, more time to fall deeper in love with the person you're becoming. Don't rush that process. Don't skip steps because you're afraid of missing out. There is no missing out on what's meant for you. That's the whole point. When someone is truly meant for you, the timing will align, not because you forced it, but because both of you had to walk your individual paths to become the people who could meet each other and recognize what you were seeing. So trust the journey. Trust the unfolding. Trust that every experience, even the painful ones, especially the painful ones, are shaping you into someone capable of receiving and sustaining real love. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not unlovable. You are exactly where you need to be. Learning exactly what you need to learn, becoming exactly who you need to become. And when that person walks into your life, when you look at them and feel that deep recognition, that quiet certainty, that sense of coming home, you'll understand why nothing else worked out. You'll see that every closed door was protecting you from something that wasn't aligned with your highest good. You'll realize that the universe wasn't punishing you with loneliness. It was preparing you for something real. Until then, keep choosing yourself. Keep honoring your truth. Keep listening to that inner voice that knows better than your fear ever could. You are worthy of the love you've been seeking. Not because you've become perfect, but because worthiness isn't something you earn. It's something you already are. It's something you've always been. The right person won't need to be convinced of that. They'll see it the moment they meet you, and you'll see it in them too. That's how you'll know. Not because your mind will create a logical argument, but because something deeper, something wiser, something that's been waiting for this moment all along will simply recognize itself. And in that recognition, you'll understand that you were never really searching for another person. You were searching for yourself. And now that you've found yourself, truly found yourself, you're finally ready to share that discovery with someone who's done the same work. That's the love worth waiting for, worth waiting. That's the connection worth honoring yourself to receive. That's the transformation that changes everything. When someone is meant for you, you'll know. Not because the angels will sing or the stars will align in some dramatic display, but because after all the chaos, all the confusion, all the relationships that taught you what you don't want, you'll finally feel peace. Deep, quiet, unshakable peace. And in that peace, you'll know you're home. Thank you for being here on this journey of self-discovery. If these words resonated with you, if you saw yourself in this story, share your experience in the comments below. What pattern are you finally ready to break? What truth are you finally ready to honor? Your story matters, and it might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you want to continue exploring the depths of human psychology, the path to wholeness, and the journey toward authentic love, subscribe and join this community of people who refuse to settle for anything less than truth. The best is yet to come.